I'm Leah from Aesop's Fable, and we're really excited to have Sara Hammel here with us. Sara's an award-winning journalist, best-selling author. She's written for national and international publications, including Newsweek, People, U.S. News and World Report, the Sunday Times Magazine, Glamour, and Shape. The book we're going to talk about tonight is The Strong Ones: How a Band of Civilian Women Made Their Mark on the Army. It's based on a 1995 Army study of women's strength that she participated in while on staff with the now Metro West Daily News. She's also the author of 2 mystery novels. Welcome, Sara. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're so excited. And as a bonus, we have one participant and one trainer in this study with us tonight, both residents of Holliston, where Aesop's Fable resides. Mary Lammy was a test subject in the 1995 Army study and one of the strong ones featured in the book. She was both a student and a teacher during the study and went on to have a long career in education, leading to her current role as Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services in Needham. She now lives in Holliston, as I said, with her husband, who she met while going through this study. And right beside her, I don't know, you guys say hi so your screen comes up.
Hey, hi everybody. Thanks for being here.
Is Eric. He's a former collegiate and post-collegiate track and field athlete. He competed in the U.S. Olympic trials in the decathlon in 1984. He has coached track and field at a number of universities and high schools, as well as working as a health club fitness director. Eric is a certified strength and conditioning specialist and was the trainer for a couple of the groups in this Women's Army strength study. He continued to work on numerous other studies in Natick, primarily with the Division of Thermal and Mountain Medicine on the physical effects of altitude on human performance. So we're really excited to hear from both of them. They enjoy spending time together, traveling, hiking, camping, and relaxing at their lake house in Lunenburg. So welcome, Lammies. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we're going to start with Sara. She's going to talk a little bit about the book, how it all came about, the whole process. Then she's going to segue into Eric talking a little bit about the findings and how it was to be a trainer. And then Mary's going to tell us a little bit about what it was like to be a participant in this study and the relationships and the effects of it. And then we'll open up to Q&A. So however people prefer, if you have a question as we're going through and you want to write it in the chat, feel free. Otherwise, once everyone's done, I'll open it up for questions and kind of facilitate that. So we're really excited for tonight. Thank you all for being here. And Sara, I'm going to give you the mic.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and for having us tonight. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Okay, I'm not muted. Okay, good. You never know. As Leah graciously said, we're here with me. I wrote the book and I was in the study, and Mary, who was in a completely different training group than I was. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's important that we had different training groups in this study. But before we hear from her, we'll hear from Eric as well. So I'm ready to get started. I did want to, I know a lot of you have seen the videos that we've put out, but they're really vivid and have these really nice pictures. And this one sort of encapsulates a lot of what the study was in a 2-minute video. So I'm just going to start with that just to get you really excited. And I'll be back with you in just under 2 minutes. So enjoy the video. Enjoy it very soon.
135-pound trailer tow was a pretty difficult task. They had to run 2 miles through the woods, varying terrain, 160, 100-pound squats, 2 seconds per squat.
We expected them to succeed.
It's been a while. Some people wanted to get in shape. Others wanted to participate in the study to participate in something that was big and was going to help female soldiers accomplish what they did accomplish.
Oh, love that video. So it gives you just a little flavor of exactly what we're talking about. And the reason that we're here and the reason that this book exists is because a lot of us made the very interesting decision to become a test subject in an extreme Army women's strength study in 1995. And I remember actually the day I first heard about the study. It was a cold winter in Massachusetts, and I was in the newsroom where I was a cub reporter, just digging around for news stories and things that might be going on in the suburbs to write about. And the Metro editor of the newspaper came up to me with this article. It was a small article, and it just talked about the study, and it included this article she showed me included such alarming words as intense, extremely heavy weights, rigorous exercise. And the headline was something along the lines of Army seeks civilian women for new strength study. And at the time I was writing, my newspaper articles that you would write in the local paper, things about town meetings and liquor licenses where you can see there, a local astronaut I got to interview. And then Matthew Perry from the TV show Friends, as you can see, I charmed him beyond belief. You can see by his face that he loved being interviewed by me. So no, but he was lovely, but he came to our town, so I interviewed him. So this was something completely different. That's what I'm getting at. And so I read about this, these exercises they wanted us to do. And I looked up at the editor and I thought she might be kidding. And it turned out she was not kidding. And, I was fairly active at the time, but I was much more into like relaxed bicycle rides, long walks in the woods and, an aerobics class here and there. I wasn't into anything too extreme. So I wasn't sure why the editor brought this to me. But I did what she said and I read further and learned that scientists at a nearby Army base were looking for young women to spend 7 months training in order to determine if women could get strong enough to do the military's toughest tasks. And they needed, subjects who were willing to tie themselves to a 110-pound trailer and drag it through the woods, rocky, hilly woods for 2 miles. They wanted people who would put a 75-pound backpack on and do the same thing and race through the woods as fast as they could. Not a lot of racing went on, but some people did, who you'll hear about later. And this would go on for 1.5 hours a day for 5 days a week for about 6 to 7 months, including all the testing phases that we would go through. And with female soldiers busy doing the work of defending our country, scientists had to look for civilians to take on the study because it was very, intense and time commitment, really. So they needed civilians. And, my editor, I looked up at her again and she suggested that I volunteer and write about it. So it turns out, as I dug a little further, that the study would be taking place at what we call colloquially Natick Labs, which was down the street from my office. And it was run by what's called the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine, or what they call US ARIEM. They love their acronyms in the military. And their job is to study health and performance and the impact of environmental stressors on soldiers. So anything related to nutrition, exercise, heat, and cold, for example, all in order to produce a more lethal and survivable soldier. So I thought about it for a little while, and I finally said, okay, I could consider doing this. So I took it to our top editor, who happened to be the first female executive editor in the history of our newspaper's history. So, she was on board pretty quickly, to my surprise. So then I was kind of stuck. I thought, okay, do I really want to do this? And I decided that I did. So I just jumped. Once she said I could do it, I didn't think too much about what the day-to-day would be like and if I could actually do it all. I just kind of said, all right, let's try to sign up. So a newspaper editor spoke to the Army and the scientists, and we agreed on a plan, and they let me in. You'll read in the book that there was a little more to it than that, but that's, for this purpose, that's the point. That's sort of how it worked out. So I was finally in, and I was very excited. And then, of course, life does not always go to plan. Just when I was getting excited about doing it, it turned out there might not be a study at all, because at the time, the notion of women serving on front lines in this country was still pretty controversial. Women were actually still banned from most ground combat roles solely because of our gender. A policy that was solidified with the combat exclusion rule that came into force in 1948. There were some adjustments in 1994, but ultimately it all stemmed from the 1948 law. And so in 1995, at the time of the study, there were politicians, pundits, and top military brass who believed women weren't strong enough physically to hold our own in combat. And that we would reduce morale on the battlefield, and that the public simply did not want to see daughters and sisters and young moms going off to war. So our study would actually be put on hold indefinitely that winter, after a controversial news story came out from the Washington Times. It was a front page story, and it had a semi-nonsensical, I thought, headline that said, "Why can't a woman be more like a man?" And the story didn't really answer that question, but they did interview the principal investigator on our study, who conceived it and wrote the program and ran it. His name is Dr. Everett Harmon. And he explained to the newspaper quite reasonably that there are many physically demanding, quote, "there are many physically demanding jobs in the Army, and it's easier for the Army to assign people to jobs without worrying about their gender." But next, the article quoted a retired colonel who said, "The ludicrous notion that we can go out there and hire women and spend a phenomenal amount of time building them up to the equal of men just doesn't make any sense. We cannot afford social experiments with the military forces of this country," end quote. And at the same time, around that time, Newt Gingrich, who was the new Speaker of the House, was widely reported to be talking about women's lack of upper body strength and the fact that we, pardon the graphic imagery, but get too many infections to serve in combat. And I'm not sure what those are exactly, but that was his opinion. So the headlines about women in combat went national, and somehow they got mushed in with our study, although our study was not about combat. I don't believe that the report said anything really about combat. It was about strength and being able to do these MOSs. Yet people were still, using charged language, and they sort of accused the study of trying to turn us into wait for it, Rambos, cyborgs. I mean, these are real headlines that came out. I think one of them was in Germany. And, when it went international, the headlines went worldwide. So they put, the Pentagon doesn't like to get into policy issues. They're about implementing. So they put it on hold for a while until things died down. And thankfully, they did die down. And the study was allowed to go forward. And what it was really about was trying to show that women could do what are called the very heavy MOSs. And an MOS is a military occupational specialty, which we would call jobs, civilians. It's just really a kind of job that you sign up for as a soldier. And most, the ones that require the most upper body strength are not always the ones you might think. It's not just about loading a 90-pound artillery shell for use in a conflict situation. It's, for example, cooks. They have to be strong. 100-gallon batches of anything in an industrial kitchen is physically demanding. And as an Army scientist explained to me, Pete Frickman, who also worked on our study alongside Everett, it's quote, "It's not like a cup of this and a pinch of that. It's 50 pounds of potatoes." So you have to be strong and fit to be doing that as well. So there were jobs women were being left out of simply because of their gender. They weren't given a chance to even try. So basically, I, at the time, really didn't really even need to get into the politics anyway, because you didn't need to, the policy itself simply wasn't fair, because the whole in all of those assertions that women wouldn't do well in combat was silly, because, in my opinion, because women already were in combat. They already were in danger, already being heroes. From the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the Gulf War, American women had been doing their part in the line of fire, some making the ultimate sacrifice just as their male comrades did. The famous Molly Pitcher took over from her wounded husband in the Revolutionary War and fired on the charging redcoats, for example. And then, of course, Harriet Tubman is known for her heroic work on the Underground Railroad. But she was also a soldier and a spy. And during the Civil War, Tubman charged into battle with an all-male unit and became the first woman in U.S. history to lead an armed military operation. And during Operation Just Cause in Panama in 1989, Captain Linda Bray led a platoon into battle, and she got into a firefight, and she and her soldiers shot back. In other words, she engaged in ground combat because the situation called for it. But then they accomplished their mission, and her all-male platoon sang her praises as a leader and a fighter. But when Linda Bray came home, Captain Bray came home, she was not granted the Combat Infantryman Badge. Instead, the Army gave her the Commendation Medal for Valor in a non-combat role, because the rules said she never should have been in the fight in the first place. So the issue wasn't whether we should allow women in combat. They were already there. It was really more, should they be given a chance for the promotions and pay raises reserved only for those, who have a record of serving officially on the front lines. So knowing all that, if there was something I could do to fight for the equality of military women, I was going to do it. So the study was on its way. And the head research scientist, again, Dr. Harmon, designed a program with 24 weeks of rigorous workouts that would include lifting heavy boxes and weights, running, sprinting, backpack marches, trailer pulls, all of that. And Mary and Eric will talk a little bit about that too. And in between all this training, we would be having 3 testing phases where we would test at the beginning to see where we were at. And then after 12 weeks of training, we would have another test to see how we'd improve, just to assess. And then at the end of it, we'd have the final test that counted for everything. That's kind of how I felt about it anyway. So ultimately, 45 civilian volunteers and 1 soldier was selected for the study. And we included moms, teachers, a lawyer, a landscaper, a bartender, a prison guard, and so much more. And we were ready. Some of us hadn't worked out throughout our young lives, but some had. Some had experience with rigorous activity and some didn't. This was going to be quite a shock for some I think. So we also, it was also really exciting that we had such a great team leading us. As you can see, there's Everett Harmon in that slide from back in the day, Peter Frickman next to him, Eric Lamy, the celebrity guest who you can see in the Zoom, Chris Palmer, who I'm not sure if Chris is on tonight, but someday we'll hopefully do an event with him as well. He trained a group, and our that's where I had spoken about earlier. We had 4 groups. There were 40-ish, around 40 women, and not all of them. They all had different schedules and lives. And you had the early group, 6 a.m.-ish, and that was the group Mary trained in. B group was more like a 9:30 late morning type deal. I was in the 1 o'clock group, which is C group, which is for people whose bosses let them leave work and be gone for over 2 hours. So I was lucky that my editor knew what I was doing and let me go. So we had a lot of moms in that group as well, and people that were a little more flexible. And then we had the after work group. So A, B, C, and D. And again, you'll hear from Mary all about what it was like to be an A group, because the book, The Strong Ones, is very C group heavy, because that was a group I was in. So you read a lot about C group, not as much about A group. So I can't wait to hear from Mary's experience. It's also getting up that early. No, thank you. What else? So, I'll talk a little bit about my experience with exercises, but I really want to hear more from Mary. I would say that the backpack to me felt the most important. It just felt like the most military thing we were doing. I could almost picture what a woman in the military would be doing, carrying that 75 pounds, and where she'd be taking it, and what she would be judged on, and who she would be running behind, and all of that. And I wasn't that good at it, and I really wanted to be, and that annoyed me. I just thought I was young and strong, and I should be able to go fast, and it just was really hard. It was just it's a lot of weight. The trailer pull was tough as well. They would strap this thing to you, and you would run with it. And it just was it wasn't just heavy, it was rickety, and it would like tilt on the rocks and things. So it required patience and skill and speed and fitness. It wasn't easy. And then there were all the weights and things like that. But again, we'll hear from Eric, I think. So we spent about 3 New England seasons on that base, which was by a lake, so it made it quite pleasant, even when you were suffering. And sometimes we'd travel to a nearby forest for runs and hikes, and we just fought really hard to get strong. And a lot of us, we just never missed training unless we absolutely had to. I mean, no one I worked with ever woke up in the morning was like, I'm so sore, I have so many blisters, I'm not going. Like, we just all kept showing up. And that was partly as well due to the motivation that Everett and Pete and Eric and Chris, they made a big effort to keep us motivated and to make us want to show up. And that helped so much for me anyway. And then the women, again, Mary, I can't wait to hear you talk about how important the other women were, and how much we cheered each other on, and how vital that was, and how kind of weirdly perfect it was, in my memory anyway. So basically, Eric's going to talk a little bit about what the results were, and a little bit what final testing showed. I can just say that throughout, some of us fell with backpacks on or without. Some of us, we had blisters and bruises, and some of us had heartbreak. One of the test subjects, who was really worked so hard to do well in the trailer pull, she forgot her inhaler one day, and she had asthma, so she was really struggled and was really disappointed. So that was a low for her, but then she came back in final tests and did great. That was Jean. I don't know if she's here. She came to one earlier. But there was just a lot of ups and downs, and mostly ups, I think. And when it was over, we were all sad to say goodbye. But it was time, and we had some ceremonies sort of to say goodbye. We had a final party with may or may not have had some shenanigans and maybe some beers. And then we had an official one with the Army, where they gave us a certificate and thanked us. And that was kind of amazing to have that as well. Just, because we're not soldiers, and we weren't in combat, and we weren't serving our country. We were trying to serve our country in our own way, and for a short period of time. We tried. So that was wonderful to hear that the Army, that it mattered to them. So after the study, a lot of us had different, I think, sort of reactions and lives after that. A lot of us I know had increased confidence, and just increased strength inside and out. And I went on to have continue in journalism. And there we are in the backpack. Forgot that one. There's me in the brown. Is Mary in there? No, that's Stacy, Trish. Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. There's more backpacking. Box lift. Mary and Eric can talk about a lot of the box lifts. A lot of lifting boxes, because a lot of women in the military have to lift a lot of boxes. They load a lot of vehicles and unload a lot of vehicles, apparently. There I am on the bench press. Look at that. Look at her go. Wow. What is that, Eric? A deadlift? No,
Yeah, that's a deadlift or
that's a
remaining.
deadlift. I knew it. 25 years. What can I say? um, this was mid testing or final testing, I think, mid test maybe, and that's Stacy Menino. We used to call her the mayor. Eric came up with that because Mayor Menino was the mayor of Boston for a really long time, so he would call her the mayor, and she's she's around. She's one of the strong ones. And there's Eric. Can you see his mullet? I don't know, but
We can see his turtleneck.
love it. It's great. And so I went on to just explore the world, and I moved to New York and Washington DC and London and Switzerland and LA, and just kind of like, you know, the study just kind of gave me a little more confidence, and not just that I was like so strong and great. It was more that I had known that I could fail. I failed a lot in the study, I felt like, even on small levels, and I was okay at the end of it. And if you fall, you get back up again. And that's kind of one of the big things that I learned. So I just went out and did what I wanted to do. And some things were successful and some things weren't, but I went for it anyway. So briefly, before I send you over to Eric, I will just say how the book got started. What ended up happening is in 2016, I had my first book published, and it was a mystery called The Underdogs for teens and middle grade. There's more working for people in Europe, underdogs. So Everett Harmon came to one of my book signings in Wellesley, completely surprised me. Like, I just looked up and he was there, and I almost lost it. And we gave him a big hug, and he gave me a big hug, and we started chatting. And I just said, wait a minute. Suddenly we just had the announcement that in January 2016, women, all jobs were officially open to women. It started with former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta and was carried out by Secretary Ash, I believe, in 2016. And they finally just said, it's time. You're allowed to try to qualify. You might not be able to do it. Not every woman can do every job. Not every person can do every job. But it was time to let women try. So I said to Everett, wait a minute, did our study cause any of that? Like, were we any reason whatsoever why 20 years later, women had greater opportunity in the military? And he said, I'd heard good things, but I'm not sure. So I just said, that's it. I miss my friends. You know, a lot of us didn't keep in touch. I'd say most of us, because there was no social media back then, but more to the point, there wasn't email. Like, you'd have to like sit down with a quill pen and like, dearest, so-and-so, it's been so long, how I miss you. So we weren't going to do that, especially like when I moved to 10 different places. So I tracked everyone down, and I decided it's time, and I had a blast. And so what I'm going to do is talk a little more about what I found after we hear more of the nitty gritty and the more interesting than blood, sweat, and tears, and some of the nitty gritty of the important exercises that we did, and how important it was to have these trainers and scientists who knew exactly what they were doing. So if I can turn this over to Eric for a bit, let's do this.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I want to start by thanking Leah for hosting this event, and for Sara for doing all the work to write this book. I mean, she was a great test subject 26 years ago, kept me laughing, as I recall. I think I kept her laughing a little bit here and there as well. And I know this took a lot of work, and to dig everything up, and then to put everything in down on paper, and in a relatively short amount of time. I think we met about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, and now everybody's getting the books on their shelves and saying good things about it. So I'm going to start by telling you how I heard about the study. I was working at Fitchburg State College, which is now Fitchburg State University, as an assistant track coach, and I was also working on a couple of studies with one of the professors there. One was a Nordic track study where we were comparing the effects of a Nordic track workout with the effects of a normal weightlifting running type workout. And then another one was a state police assessment of their physical capacity. I would go to various places and test the aerobic capacity, the VO2 maxes of the state police. He was just the professor there, Dr. Cunningham, was working on a study for the state police. And one day he came to his office and he says to me, he goes, I was just at the Natick Army Labs and there's a study that they're going to be doing there that you might be interested in. He knew that I had a master's in exercise science and that I was interested in strength and conditioning and I was a track coach and so on. And so he brought the article that was, I guess Sara wrote it before the study started. I don't recall, but he already had an article and it was about the study that was going to happen. And so I called the lab and found out that Everett Harmon was the person to talk to. And I got in touch with Everett and he called me in for an interview. And based on my experience and my education and also my certification with the National Strength and Conditioning Association as a strength specialist, he hired me to be one of the trainers for the study, which ended up, I have to thank Everett for that because actually at the end of this study, I ended up working there for another 20 years on different studies, mostly for the altitude group. So
I thank you too, Everett.
So with my background was primarily in track and field, and I was a jumper in high school and college, but afterwards I got involved with the decathlon, and that was my real forte. I was, as Sara mentioned, or Leah mentioned, I was in the Olympic trials in 1984. I didn't make the Olympic team, but I was amongst those that were, at the top level trying out. And what I knew from my training, two contemporaries of mine were Florence Griffith Joyner, FloJo, as many of you will remember her, and Jackie Joyner Kersey. And FloJo ran faster than Jesse Owens ran in the 100 meters and could squat 450 pounds. And Jackie Joyner Kersey long jumped over 24 feet. I was a jumper in high school and college, and she jumped as far as I did. And so I knew what women were capable of doing as far as performance goes. I mean, women have high jumped 6 feet, 10 inches. I mean, just hold your hand up over your head and just imagine just jumping over something that high without touching it. And that's, what I had already encountered. So it was this study was right up my alley. I mean, I had coached a lot of women. I had been around, world-class athletes. And, I think that Everett, once I had met Everett as well, I found out that we had a very similar philosophy. And I had read a lot of articles, some of which I think Everett had written with regards to strength and conditioning and the effects of different types of training. And so we were on the same page with regards to the way to train people and get them to improve. So the study began, as Sara mentioned, with 2 weeks of testing, and then it was followed by 14 weeks of training, and then we did mid-testing, and then the training resumed for another 10 weeks, and then we did the final testing, which was really the most important tests, the beginning to the end, the difference between the beginning and the end. And the tasks selected for the testing had already been selected when I joined the study. Everett had done most of it, I think, in collaboration with Pete and in collaboration with other people in the military, had decided what are the important things that we should be testing, and everything had to have some relationship to what military personnel had to do. Like, for example, the 52-inch box lift was developed because the height of the bed of a typical truck is 52 inches from the ground. So what we needed to see is how much weight could a woman lift to that height. So that became one of the tasks that they had to perform in the tests. they often have to do rapid loading and unloading of supplies. So that's where the repetitive box lift came into play. And in a lot of those types of things, they had to develop a way to test these things without, with certain equipment. And so Pete Frickman, who's sort of a engineer and does a lot of that type of stuff at the lab, he developed that you would slide these things on rollers and they would return to where you picked it up. And by the time you picked up another one, the thing would come on rollers all the way back down to you and you'd lift it again. And so that was kind of cool. And I think Pete enjoyed sort of messing around with that and developing a lot of those types of things. Carrying heavy loads in backpacks is something that soldiers very often have to do. So carrying a 75-pound backpack through the woods, through the Natick Town Forest was definitely, one of the tasks as well. So virtually every one of the tasks that the subjects were tested on had something to do with a military occupation. As Sarah had mentioned before, the training occurred Monday through Friday, and there were 4 different groups. The A group was typically people who got up at 6 a.m. to train and left at 7:30 for their jobs. And they did that every day, like Sarah said, for the entire summer. I'm trying to remember because I think I've been on 2 or 3 vacations every summer for the last 25 years. But that summer, I guess I didn't go on vacation. And I'm there like, I couldn't have because we had the study going on. So it's kind of amazing, when you think back and that nobody went on vacation the whole summer. All these people had to give up all their free time and their families and everything. So, but Group A was the people who had to go to work. Group B and C were during the middle of the day. And like Sarah said, some of them were home with their kids. Others just got time off from work. And then the D group was a group that came after work. And oftentimes you're kind of tired after work or whatever, but they stuck with it and, they went through all the training and missed very few days. And, there were hard days and there were days that, you were excited to be there. And there were days where that was the last place I'm sure that you wanted to be. But, everybody sucked it up and was there almost every day. The weight training that we used to do, Everett initially, I think, developed the exercises, and then they all had to have something to do with some of the tasks that they were trying to be better at. So there was a lot of leg exercises, squats and Romanian deadlifts and things like that. And then some of the things, like I remember when Everett developed one where it was almost like a curling movement and then you'd lift up after the curl. And, it's an exercise none of us had ever heard of before, but Everett explained, well, if you're going to lift something up to here and then up over your head. So they were lifting weights in that exact same motion. So that's what we were trying to do, is trying to develop weight exercises that would mimic some of the, tasks that the subjects were trying to improve upon. They generally lifted 4 times a week, and then twice a week they ran at the end of the workout 2 miles, or they ran sprints up Cement Hill, which Sarah talks about in the book, which she loved. And then typically Wednesdays they did backpacking, and sometimes if you're tested at 75 pounds, well, you're not carrying a 75-pound backpack all the time, but they might have done 5 miles with 35 pounds, or someone else might have done 4 miles with 50 pounds. So it was sort of individualized in that way. And then it was also progressive. I mean, the only way you're going to improve in training is to make it a little bit harder every time that you do it. So we were very systematic as far as doing that. And Everett and Chris and I often put our heads together and said, well, what should this person do? And what should that person do? And we were able to develop training plans that we think were effective. And I think we proved that they were effective. Obviously, some of the women were stronger than others, so they lifted heavier weights than others. And that's the way it should be. That's the way, everything is. But throughout the study, the women developed a very strong camaraderie, as Sarah had mentioned, and Mary's going to talk about as well. It really is to be expected. I mean, I've done a lot of coaching, and the teams get really into each other. They cheer each other on in the track meets or basketball games or whatever, whatever sport you're in. And this was no different. The women got very close to each other, and they cheered each other on. And when some of them had a bad day, others were there to lift them up. And I think it's something that some of them were not expecting, because maybe they hadn't played a lot of sports together, or they hadn't competed really. But this was really a competition. They were competing to be better, than they were in the beginning. But there was also some internal competition between each other. They wanted to be one of the best, backpackers, or one of the people that lifted the most amount of weight, and so on and so forth. So, but all that stuff brings you closer together, and each person pushes the other person. So it really worked out, very well, just the way it should have been. But I think it was surprising for some people. I really think that some of the people joined the study, as I think Sarah mentioned. I think some of the people just said, "Hey, I get a free personal trainer. I get a free gym. I don't have to join a gym, and they're actually going to pay me as well. This sounds great. It's a way for me to, lose a few pounds and so on and so forth." But I think towards the end of it, everyone had a different feel for it. I don't think any of us really expected this to. I mean, I didn't. Everett probably knew, but we didn't know that this was going to have such a long-term effect. I mean, I hadn't worked on any studies like this before. I had coached athletes, and the next year you coach some different athletes, or you try to make them a little bit better. But most of those people, 25 years later, they're not, their performance didn't have this overall effect that the study probably had in the military. So give me a second here. I'm kind of new to the Zoom. As Sarah mentioned too, I mean, this study lasted for 8 months, because some of the post training was actually a couple of people got sick or injured. And so I can remember a couple of people having to do like the backpack or the trailer pull, like after it had already snowed over in the native town forest. So, I think the entire study took about 8 months. So just think about every day for 8 months being involved in this study. It was really, really something. But as far as the results go, I mean, as expected, and as Everett said in that little video, I mean, we expected them to improve, and they improved dramatically. I mean, before the training, 24% of the women qualified to do heavy or what is called very heavy Army jobs. That's 24% in the beginning. And at the end, 78% qualified. So, 3 times as many people were able to, meet that standard. The speed of a 75-pound backpack carry increased from 3.4 to 4.4 miles per hour. So an entire mile per hour, which is basically a 33%, improvement, which is huge. By the end of the training, the average box weight that a woman could lift was 118 pounds, which is 81% of the amount that a man could lift. So, and that's of a man who was actually an active military duty at the time. So, that's quite an accomplishment as well. And for the women themselves, they had fat loss and muscle mass gain pretty much unanimously across the board. So those were some of the side, benefits that we were looking at them, but they weren't the most important. What we were really looking at was the performance. But, when you're training for performance, I think, that's one of the things that Everett and I agreed upon in the beginning. The first thing that I always tell people is, well, if you want to lose some weight, then you should train to be better at something. And, that training itself, I mean, there's a reason that athletes look the way they do, muscular and lean and whatever. It's because they're training hard and they're pushing themselves, and the looks just come as a sidelight to that. And so many of the individual performances were really impressive. When one woman was able to lift her body weight to 60 inches, Everett, Chris, and I were so impressed that we decided that we had to try it. So over the lunch break, we put weights in the box and gradually worked our way up to our own body weights. And let's just say we were partially successful. Okay, so
Which part, Everett? Which part?
And one of the other individual performances, the best time in the 75-pound 2-mile backpack was an astonishing 19 minutes and 44 seconds. So faster than a 10-minute mile with a weight on your back of more than half of your body weight. I mean, it's really quite astonishing, even to this day, to me. There was a male control subject. I won't say who that person was. There was a male control test subject, which we had male controls just to compare what the average male would do on some of these tests. And I remember the guy, and he was a 15-minute 5K runner, basically a guy who could run 3 5-minute miles in a row. And he did a 19:19, which is just, 25 seconds faster. So that was pretty amazing performance as well. One strong subject was able to do over 160 squats with 100 pounds on her back. I have one recommendation: don't try this at home. On a personal note, when the study began, I was living at my family's lake house about 50 minutes away and still doing some coaching part-time at the college. It was the end of the season. And partway into the study, I got tired of the drive and I wanted to move closer. So luckily, Everett had tenants in his upstairs apartment, and they needed a roommate. So Everett said, check with Mary. She's in group A. I didn't really know Mary. And he goes, she's in group A, and they're looking for a roommate. So one thing led to another. And after numerous camping trips on weekends and a few cocktails on the front steps, Mary and I became a couple. And I think it's safe to say the Women's Army Strength Training Study of 1995 was a success in many ways. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. That was quite the ending. Sarah, do you want me to just go right in?
Go to town.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hang on. I have notes as well. So, Eric and Sarah, first of all, I just want to be sure to say thank you to Sarah. It's just been so fun, such a blast to be able to reconnect and be part of the book and all the pre-work. So I really appreciate Sarah and being here tonight and all that you're doing. So thank you for that. And I just, every time I look at us and those clothes, Sarah, I'm like, oh my God, the 1990s were not kind. Okay. So yes, it was 1995. I was 24, 25, maybe at the time, 3 years out of college and teaching. I was teaching at a special education school, a private school. I was going to graduate school at night. And in my free time, I was honestly just having a lot of fun. There was very little motivation or time left really for going to the gym or working out. And, I was pretty out of shape. So when the study came along and Everett was the person that told myself and at the time, a good friend of mine, Lisa, my roommate, about it, I naively saw it as a great chance for me to get into shape and lose a few pounds, maybe challenge myself. And it was a bonus to have access to trainers in a gym about 2 miles down the road. So that's kind of really, what drew me to it. I had no idea what I was getting into and how hard it was going to be. Eric and Sarah have already mentioned, I was in A group, group A, and we had the 6 o'clock session. So it was 6 a.m. every day, 5 days a week for 7-8 months. And we never missed, I can't recall anybody ever missing. And, Eric's gone over a lot of the, technical exercises. I just sort of remember like we ran, we hiked, we lifted weights, which I had never done before, squats, learned how to deadlift, lunges, something called burpees, which should just be outlawed, sandbag runs, hill runs, box jumps, push-ups. There was really, it felt at the time like there wasn't really anything we weren't doing. And as Sara talks about in the book, certainly those, first few days of testing followed by training, we were all like a fish out of water. We just didn't know what we were doing. And we're, pretty much out of shape as a group. Chris, our trainer, Chris Palmer, was my trainer. So Eric was not my trainer. He was a trainer, but he was not my trainer. And so Chris was the trainer for a group, and he was awesome, as was Eric, and just such a great teacher. He was very positive, but he worked us. We worked hard every day, and there was definitely, as Sara was saying, just like a lot of days where just everything hurt, from my muscles to, as Sara pointed out in the book, my freckles. Thanks a lot, Sara. So it seemed, but I loved it. We all did. It was just that type of working out is still something that I enjoy today. I don't know how we did what we did back then. So certainly not to that level, but that type of fitness is really something that stuck with me. As far as like challenges and victories, it was definitely the endurance events for me, the running and the backpack, even with the heavy weight, the repetitive squats, and even that dang trailer toe, although, maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that more, Sara, later, but, that was sort of like a blend of like pure torture, but, you were in the woods running, and, those tended to be some of the events that I really enjoyed. The challenges for me were the heavy lifting, those box lifts. I just, it just was not my strength. And I did not look forward to that. There was definitely a lot more women who were stronger than me, but it was really awesome watching them perform and getting stronger. It was really a great way to see that, there were different types of strength and skills that were developing, and that all contributed to the success of the study, which, is a real, that's a big takeaway, I think, from, the purpose of the study and what it was trying to prove. As far as impact, I actually knew very little about the impact the study was trying to have at the beginning. Unlike Sara, if Google was a thing, I would have had to Google Newt Gingrich. I just was kind of 24 and, very egocentric. So, that was sort of my entry. But, what ended up happening was, one, I met these amazing, dedicated researchers and scientists and trainers who were really excited about this opportunity to train us as women, and essentially, at least in our minds, so that we could become hardcore athletes, or at the very least strong enough and fit enough to take on the tasks in the Army that were at the time off limits to women, and hopefully, help us to kick a little butt in the process. And then the second thing, and more important, was just, meeting these amazing women, who became, my A group. We were all hardworking women focused on being the best in our careers or in life. And this quickly became our approach to our workouts in the gym and on the Army base. As has been said, we pushed each other every day for 7 months. It was the first time I had ever worked out like that. I had, with that kind of sort of required focus on my overall health and fitness in order for the study to be successful. At some point, and I think it was early on, it stopped being about losing weight and getting in shape and became performance-based and team-driven, and all about doing the best I could do to add to the results of the research, and to do well by my team, and the overall outcome of the study. So, definitely one of the ways the study impacted me was learning, how to live a healthy, fit lifestyle. As women, we can really be hard on ourselves, for how we look and what we weigh, how our clothes fit, what size we are. The study really taught me that if you really want to see results, you need to set a goal, work towards the goal through the right kind of training or, whatever process it might be, and just monitor your progress and adjust when you need to. And just by doing that, you start to see results. Your self-esteem goes up, you feel better, you start carrying yourself better. And so in turn, you look better, you build skill and confidence in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. It's just a good way to live your life. It's actually helped me in all aspects of my life. When I'm challenged with something at work or in my personal life, I lean on my physical activity to clear my head or, get a boost of endorphins or, just feel better about myself. And that's really been that's been a real gift that the study and experience gave to me. And I'm, really grateful for that. The bigger picture, I think, as far as, the impact goes, was just really realizing, that this was so much bigger than just a workout experience. It was certainly bigger than me. The idea, that we could be part of making change for women in the armed forces and push limits set on women in general, that was just awesome. It was an incredible opportunity, and it gave me a real sense of purpose. At the same time, I was beginning a career in education and learning how to advocate for children with disabilities so that they could have the same educational opportunities as any child. And the study, I think, in a lot of ways set me further down a path that I was already on. And that was finding ways in my personal life and my professional life to push the limits, put a little crack in the ceiling, if you will, and create equity and opportunities where they didn't yet exist, not just for women, but also for people of different abilities, from different races and backgrounds, and to be able to choose, who we are and who we love and who we want to be and what we want to do in this world. When I really thought about it, this is truly the impact the study has had in my life, just a further validation of who I wanted to be and the path that I wanted to be on. And I really am thankful to Everett and Pete and to Chris and of course Eric and all of the women of groups A, B, C, and D for having had the experience together. It was pretty profound, and honestly took me reconnecting with Sara, I think, and talking about the study 25 years later to really appreciate how pivotal it was in my life. And oh yeah, one more thing, I snagged myself one of the trainers, and that's how it's done, people. That's how it's done. Got him to fall in love with me. We eventually got married. We have one of the best "how'd you meet" stories I think there is. Our story, might have to be the sequel, Sara, to the book that you've written. And so, I know a lot of you, here tonight know us, and, that our life is often, it's often been full throttle because Eric doesn't know how to do it any other way. He doesn't have a downshift. There is no halfway for him. And I think sometimes, I can be that way as well. So yeah, We've enjoyed a great life traveling and backpacking in Europe, hiking in the mountains and road tripping and skiing. We got married in 2001 and have 2 children, Eli and Kiera, who are now teenagers. God help us. And Eric has been training them in track and field events off and on through the years. Eli's actually becoming a really great shot put thrower and discus. And we've actually got a shot put circle in the backyard. It's a legit shot put circle. And Eric's cut tree stumps to use for jumping drills. I mean, it's definitely been a wild ride since 1995, that's for sure. So I think it's fair to say that, neither one of us, like Eric had said, could have predicted this is where the study would lead to, but here we are. And I think we're doing pretty good, at least so far. And that's all I got, Sara. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mary. It was so great to hear all of that. That's awesome. You got to go on tour. We got to do this from now on. I love hearing all of you guys. So thank you. I'm actually just going to do really, really, really quick roundup. Mary's going to close out with this really beautiful and fun poem that she wrote about the study. So I can't wait to hear that. I'm just going to really hit a couple of highlights just so you have a sense of what the study what impact it had on the world going forward as opposed to what it had on us. So very briefly, that day that I saw Everett at my book signing, I naively thought, oh, so did our study directly, did some high ranking officer pick it up and go, oh, now we know women can do it. Like, let's change everything. No, that's not the case at all. So made some phone calls, did some research. And really what I found, spoiler alert, a lot of you I know will read the book, especially Mary's friends and Eric's friends, to see more about them. But we actually kind of just worked our way into the DNA, I think, of military research and Army research. We were kind of building blocks in a lot of ways. The study in Everett's report, really was used in a lot of future important studies, such as what's called the OPAT, which the entire name escapes me, but that's the acronym. And it's a really, really important measure that they use now to create, it's a gender neutral test that soldiers can take to determine who's best for what job. And that means that women can take this test and be, have a shot at pretty much anything. So that was important. And I also heard, interestingly, very recently, and I've not been able to get to the nitty gritty yet of all the facts, but someone contacted me and said that our results have been used extensively and mentioned in a new study about women, the first women rangers, which you may know that's one of the toughest, beats. I think it's special ops. Was always off limits to women, but now there are women in it, and they're studying the effects of what it's like to be a ranger on women. And our study, Everett's study, has been used in a big way. So apparently there's more interesting news coming down the pike about what this study did and its effect on current military women, which I'm so excited about, and I know the rest of these guys are too. So read the book for more details. I know we're getting late, and I really just want to hear from Mary. And I've really found that her poem is excerpted in my book. She kindly let me do it, and I've really found that it encapsulated from the minute why we did the study and then how we felt at the end. It's just like a fun, nice way to close it out. So I'm going to mute myself, and no pressure, Mary, but just take it away.
I'm ready. Okay, here I go. Have you heard of Gingrich, first name Newt? He gave this speech, man, what a beaut. He thinks women are weak, defenseless, and brittle. Did we take offense? Maybe just a little. So a study began to prove we can get strong, to show that we're right and Newt is dead wrong. Everett and Pete were put in charge of it all, quite a big task, but they're having a ball. They found 40 women that they could test to show Newt Gingrich women are the best. They hired 2 trainers to build our strength and endurance. They wished us luck and suggested health insurance. So 5 days a week for just under 2 hours, Chris and Eric, the trainers, test our true powers. We lift weights and we run and we hike for 5 miles. Did I mention the backpacks and our beautiful smiles? The workouts are hard and our bodies are sore. We've got blisters, pulled muscles, bruises, and more. But if you ask, has it been worth it? Are we having fun? The answer is yes, and we'll be sad when it's done. We're faster, we're stronger. Just put us to the test. Ask Chris and Eric. They'll tell you the rest. They'll tell you we've improved from start to finish. It's like they've given us a dose of Popeye's spinach. So here's to Group A and Group B, Group C and Group D. We represent women who can kick butt in the Army. And for Newt and those like him, I hope you realize we've proven you wrong. There's mud in your eyes. $19.95, Gary Desmond.
So young to be so wise back then. And that concludes tonight's presentation.
That was great. That was wonderful. I think that was a wonderful way to close out Women's History Month.
Yeah, I forgot to say that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great event. And, I don't know if everyone knows, but Everett is actually in the audience. I don't know if Everett wants to say anything, not to put you on the spot.
I didn't hear that. If I want to say anything?
Yeah.
A great bunch of women. It was an unbelievable experience. the most rewarding study I ever did. And the bonding was just unbelievable. It was definitely the highlight of my research, really. I can't say more about it. They were just wonderful people. Just a great, great experience.
Thanks, Everett.
Okay.
Jean's on the screen. Hi, Jean.
Hi, Jane.
Wait.
Yeah, I jumped in. It was a busy night, but I wanted to come in and join you guys. It's great to see all of you, and yeah, just a good time.
Were you here when I talked about your trailer pull?
You know what? I think I heard you say, and it's funny because you mentioned like the asthma, right? And I came back in the end and tried harder. I was so upset. But anyways, I did a workout today. I think it was 3 minutes, and I was using my inhaler.
Yeah. 25 years will do that to you, Jean.
Yeah, no, but I miss you guys. I think it's great. I can't wait till we can meet in person and just keep talking this out. I love it. I love reliving this. And Mary, you said it so well, you know, it's just,
I know, it's so good
getting in contact with Sara again. It's just really livens it up. It just brings you back.
Yeah.
Yep. We gotta have a reunion.
I can't wait for the party.
Yeah.
I don't think we could ever party that hard anymore.
Watch me. I'll try.
Give it a try. I'll give it a try.
As long as Everett's there, all right, he can lead the way.
If the audience has any questions, feel free to jump in. You can wave, raise your hand, or type in the chat if there's anything you want to hear about. While we're waiting, I'm curious if it was really competitive to get into the study, or was it hard to get 35 people?
Everett should answer that.
Yeah, it's we didn't want to be biased and just select certain people. So as long as they were basically healthy, past the doctors, just got permission to exercise from a doctor. I mean, that's about it. We can't really bias studies, so we just pretty much took everybody.
You took everybody. Okay, interesting.
The motivation is the most important thing, and the people who volunteered were ready to do it.
Cool. Donna's asking if this recording will be available to share with others. Yes, I should have it tomorrow, and I will forward it to whoever would like it. And it's actually also, I think, going to be broadcast on, I think it's okay with everybody, to be on the Holliston cable TV news station.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
My kids would love it.
Do your kids like the story? Does it make you cooler?
They don't want to hear about it, no.
No, they really don't. They really are like care less.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you all for a wonderful presentation. I was curious if people talked at all during the study about the role it might play. Were people aware of, I mean, obviously, Sara, you were writing your articles at the time, but of course, because everyone had jobs and the workouts were so busy, was there time, or did people talk about the impact the study might have and why they were doing it? Or was it just kind of like, let's just get through these workouts and cheer each other on?
I would say that I don't think there was much talk about it. I think people were just trying to get through the workouts, and I don't think I, as the trainer of 3 of the groups, or the people in my groups, really thought of it in that way. I think looking back, it's one of those things that it looks that way in a rear view mirror, but at the time we were doing it, people were just trying to get through the workouts on a daily basis, and they signed up for this. And like I said, people had different motivations for signing up for it, but there wasn't a lot of talk about, what this study was going to mean in the long run. I think there was hope that it was going to lead to things in the future, but there wasn't really a lot of thought about it, I think, at the time.
The one thing I would say is because of Sara's writing, that sort of anchored us. So, I would agree. I think we were pretty, myopic in our thinking, like just thinking about wanting to do well as far as like the results that, within our little bubble. And Sara helped us to see the broader, the broader picture. So yeah, I don't think we were like, working out, talking about it, but it wasn't a silent piece. And it was helpful to be able to get that 10,000 foot up lens on what this was all about. And then you just, when you're in a group of 40 women, you do have great conversations about what women are capable of and our strength and all, those kind of things. So those conversations certainly happened.
Great question, Jill. Thank you. From London. I mean, wow, what a trooper.
I know.
Oh, great.
Jenna, do you have a question?
Sure. Yeah. First, thank you for this. It's been great to be able to hear some new things about people that I've known a long time. I guess my question is, now that you have had sort of 25 years to reflect on it, if you were able to sort of go back and talk to your younger self at the time, what do you think you would say now to your 24, 25-year-old self? And same for Eric and Everett or anybody else, like, what would you reflect on? What would you have wanted to pass on to yourself to know then that you know now? And yeah.
Good question. I'll go first, and then Mary. Oh, you go first.
No, you go.
Mine was going to be short, and then I was going to let you take the more important. No, I would just say, don't be so hard on yourself and get over yourself. Like, really, it's not like, just calm down. And it was just like everything had so much importance, and everything was like a big deal. And like, yeah, I don't know. Just don't be so hard on you. That would be my number one. Don't be so hard on yourself in pretty much every aspect. But that's a great question. I could write an entire book on that. But Mary.
Well, that's a great way to answer the question. I mean, I think, when at 50, you look back and you just realize that life is a long journey with lots of, winds and twists in the road. And, I think it's just, it is realizing that, everything sort of leads, you're on a road and a path somewhere. And that's just the way that life, is going to lead you. I think I took for granted the study. I don't know what I would have said to myself, but it really, like Eric was saying before, like the look back was like, wow, we were really part of something pretty special. And I'm not sure my, 24-year-old self really grasped that at the time. So
we kind of thought like, oh, well, when's the next 6-month free training gonna happen? When was that? No, it never, like, no one ever invited me to do that again. I was infuriated. That's all. Yeah, you're right. You take it for granted that it'll always be like that, and they'll always be afraid. Yeah, I feel that as well, for sure. Great question. Thanks for the question. Oh, Jean Trumpus. Let's see. Jean from C Group and also sometimes from D Group chimed in. I'm not going to say everything here, but if you've read the book, I'm not sure how many people have read the book, but there are some naughty words in the book, because we had in C Group, we had a sort of a battle cry, like a saying, and it was, they would ask us to do some, like early on, we'd be like, are you really asking us to like put this mask on and run on a treadmill? So we would say, do what? And then someone would say, forget that, but it wasn't forget that. So he just said, would you ask your 24-year-old self, do what? Anyway, you read the book, it's fun. So that was our battle cry.
It really did torture us. They did. It was tough. It was tough, but it was.
Your C is where you want to be.
That was our other one. See where you want to be. That was the other one. Did you have one, Mary, in A Group, or you're too busy? You guys didn't mess around like we did.
You guys got the t-shirts made up. C is where you want to be.
Yep, I still have it. I'm going to wear it to the reunion.
All right, cool.
I do not have that t-shirt, but that was great. You had a lot of flair, Sara. So I think that was, I think you pushed that.
So how did you get to know each other from the different groups if you were training at different times?
We would sometimes test together. Also, you would read about each other in some of my articles. Like Mary said, that would bring some things together. And then there were certain test subjects who threw parties and social events where we'd meet each other. So we really got to know more people. But yeah, definitely the full 40 weren't ever as bonded as each individual group. But there tended to be some crossover. Again, testing. I mean, there's pictures of me testing with like 6 women who aren't in my group kind of behind me. So you kind of get to know them. And then you hear like Eric would talk about, Sally Johnson, who did whatever that day. And you'd be like, who's that? And you'd sort of get to know them. And I got to know them more than some of the others because of my interviews. So I would say, I want to interview someone from B group today, and I'd get to know them a little bit. But
well, the other piece, and Everett, if I'm remembering this not the right way, correct me, but I think you saw that social aspect of the study was a huge part of our overall performance. So, you were always looking for ways to just, keep us motivated, and like we had that big barbecue on the grounds, and just like even smaller things that just helped us to connect outside of our group. And then it was so easy to connect because we were all doing the same thing. So we had a lot to talk about and a lot in common, at that time. So
yeah, and only we knew. So there were certain test subjects whose relationships outside got weird because you would just be so immersed in this thing, and just like your life became consumed by it. It happened with me and my friends and in the newsroom as well. It's like only you guys knew what was happening. It was so unique that became something as well.
Thank you everybody for joining us. This was fabulous. I loved it.